Is on solving quadratics by factoring. When it comes to factoring, you have been factoring in Algebra 1, you factored in geometry, and now you're going to factor in Algebra 2. And probably, it wouldn't surprise me that this is another way of factoring. No, there's not one way to factor. There's so many different ways to factor, but in my opinion, this to me has, in my experience, I've done guess and check, I've done split the middle. To me, the box method seems to be the most helpful and the easiest for most people. So that's what I'm going to teach you how to do today. Okay, solving quadratics by factoring. All right, first thing you have to remember is what we used when you do a quadratic, the setup of. The easiest way to remember this is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is the form of this problem. So when I ask you what a times c is and what I ask you what b is, you are asking the coefficients or the numbers there. So a times c, a in this problem is 1 and c is 20. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out what a times c is. So 1 times 20, which is 20. Then you're going to figure out what b is, and b is -9. Now those two numbers are very significant. Your job now is to find two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get 20, but when you add them together, you get -9. But there's a couple little things you need to think about. Two numbers, when you multiply them together and you get 20, you get a positive 20. Well, you multiplied two numbers together and you got a positive. So what do we know? We know that both numbers have the same sign. Now here's the thing. We don't know if they're both positive. We don't know if they're both negative. All that we know is they both have the same sign because a positive times a positive is a positive and negative times a negative is a positive. So because when you multiply them together and it results in a positive number, your signs are the same. But then you're going to move over here. This is when you add them together or you put them together, they result in a negative. Well, is it possible for two positive numbers that when you add them together equal a negative? No. Two positive numbers added together are going to be positive. Two negative numbers added together are going to be negative. So since the signs are the same, and when you put them together, you have this is going to tell you that both numbers are negative. So that will help you. This comes in handy when one is positive and one is negative, and we'll get to one of those in a minute. All right, so the next thing you want to do is you want to figure out the factors of 20. So how I do it is I put a little 20 like this and I put a line underneath it. And then I do them like in a U shape and I start with 1. How do we multiply them together? Well, 1 times 20 is 20. 2 times 10 is 20. 3 times nothing gives you 20, but 4 times 5 does. And then the next one is 5, but the only problem is you already have 5 listed. So when the numbers or the factors start to repeat themselves, you know you found all the factors. All right, so those are all the factors of 20. Those are all the multiplication tables that we could do to get 20. Now, we also know that both numbers are negative. So with that, we're going to go here and we're going to put little negative numbers. So we are looking for two numbers that when we multiply them together, we get 20. Okay, we got a whole bunch of them. But we add them together, we get -9. And if you're careful and you take a look right there, -4 and -5 equals -9. All right, so you just found your two numbers. Now that's where this box comes into play. This box is going to be a little bit weird to some of you, but you will get the hang of it, and I promise you it will make your life a lot easier. Now, how do you fill this box? Well, in the top left-hand corner, you're going to put the first term of the equation, so x squared. The bottom right-hand corner, you're going to put the number from the end of the equation. Now, these two boxes here, the diagonals, they are what we're going to put together to get -9. Well, we figured them out here. So we need -9x. So you're going to put a -4x and a -5x. Now, if you look together, -5x and -4x, that is -9x. This is actually what you get when you FOIL. All right. So this combination is how we broke it down. Now here's how you do this. You are going to take and look at each column. You're going to pull a GCF up the top and to the left. So this is what you do. You kind of look at these two numbers. Look at the -5x and the 20. And you decide what is the greatest common factor that you can divide out of both of these. Well, I will give you a hint. If this number that's closest to where you're going to write an answer is negative, you're definitely going to pull a negative out. So what can come out of -5 and 20? A -5 can. This has an x and this doesn't. So no x is able to come out. Now, 1 and negative 4. What can come out? A 1. Don't have to write it, but always remember that there always is at least a factor of 1. This is x squared, and this is x, so they both can give up an x. Then you're going to go left, so ignore the bottom one. X squared and negative 5x. 1 and negative 5, they can give up a 1. X squared and x, they both can give up an x. Negative 4 and positive 20, the sign on the number closest to where you're writing it is going to be the sign, so this takes out a negative 4, and both can't give up an x, so you don't put that out. Now, here's the funny part. You're done. You have your answer. There's your answer, and there's your answer. So the solution to this problem, the factored form of that equation, is x minus 5, x minus 4. And if you're careful and you want to double check it, you can actually multiply these back together and it should give you that. Okay, let's move on. Trust me when I say it does get easier, just be patient. Okay, first thing we're going to do, we're going to multiply a times c. So a times c is negative 63 and b is 2. Well, what do we know? We know that when we multiply two numbers together to get negative 63, we know that it's going to be different signs. All right, so we know one of ours is going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Okay, well, think about it. If you have two numbers, one is positive and one is negative, and you add them together, the sign of the larger number is what is the resulting answer. Let me give you an example. Negative 7 plus 5. Okay, you have 7 negatives, you have 5 positives, so the resulting answer is negative 2. So the larger number dictates what the sign is of the answer. If I flipped that around and I did 7 times negative 5, or 7 plus, then 7 is still the larger number, but this answer is positive 2. So back to this question right here. When you're trying to figure out two numbers, when you multiply them together, you get a negative 63, but when you add them together, you get a positive 2. That means that the larger number is positive. All right, so let's go down here. We're going to list our 63, the factors of 63. 1 and 63. 2 is not a factor because it's not an even number. 3 is a factor, and if you forget how to find that out, you do 6 plus 3, and that's 9, and 9 is divisible by 3, so 63 is divisible by 3, so that's going to be 21. 4 is not divisible, 5 is not, 6 is not, however, 7 is, so 7 and 9. But remember, it's a negative 63, so they have different signs. But because you wrote this, you know that the larger number is positive. So since my larger number is positive, that means my smaller number is negative. Now, which combination is going to give you 2? It's going to be that one right there. So now you're going to take that information and you're going to go in and fill your box in. The top left is the starting term. The bottom right is the end term. And then the two diagonals here are made up of what you found. Don't forget your letters. Take an extra second to verify that these do, in fact, come out to be positive 2r. All right, now we're going to factor up. 9 is positive, so that means this answer is going to be positive just because it's the sign of the one that's closest. So 9 and 63, they both can give up a 9. R and no R, so they can't give up an R. Okay, now go this direction. 1 and negative 7, so you're going to factor out a 1. If you want to put the 1 there, you can. R squared and R, up an R. All right, remember this is a positive 9, and if you want to put that there, you can. Okay, now go this direction. 1 and 1. R squared and R is R. Negative 7 and negative 63. Remember, where you're writing the answer, the box closest to it is negative, and it's going to be a negative 7. So there's your answer, right there. R plus 9 and R minus 7. There you go. There's your answer. Okay, next one. This one's going to be a little bit more work because this is the first time we actually have an A term. So you're still going to take 5 and 6 and you're going to multiply them together. So A times C is 30. B is negative 17. So what do we know? I multiplied together and I got a positive, so that tells me it's the same signs. So since they have to be the same signs, but yet when I add them they're negative, they're both negative. You don't have to write this, it's just kind of my way of pointing to helping you a lot of issues are. All right, so I'm going to write my little 30, and I'm going to write my factors of 30. So my factors of 30 are 1 times 30 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. But remember, both of my signs are negative. So I'm going to go in here, or both my numbers are negative. So I'm going to go in here and put little negative signs. And I'm looking for a combination that when I multiply them together, I get 30. There they are. But when I add them together, I get negative 17. Well, that gives me negative 32. That gives me negative 17. That gives me negative 13. And that gives me negative 11. So the combination I'm looking for is right there. Okay, to fill out your boxes. The top left is your lead term. Bottom right is your last term. And then the diagonals are what you found over here. So negative 2x, don't forget your x's, because remember, these two together is what gives you negative 17. All right, pull up. This is negative, so this is obviously going to be negative. So pull up 15 and 6. GCF of 15 and 6 is 3. X and no x, so we can't give up an x. 5 and negative 2 don't have anything in common. X squared and x, they both can give up an x. Okay, now we're going to go this direction. 5 and negative 15, so they have a GCF of 5. X squared and x, they both have an x. Negative 2 and 6, remember the sign closest to you, that's a negative. 2 and 6, they can factor out a 2. This has an x, this one does not, so they both can't give it up. Remember, it's all or nothing. So what is your answer? Your answer is x minus 3 and 5x minus 2. Good. Okay, let's go to the next problem. Number 4. Okay, A times C, and you'll notice on this one I stopped making your boxes for you. I just, I'm not going to do everything for you. All right, A times C, this is a negative 7, so it's negative 21, and B is 20. So when we multiply two numbers together, we get a negative. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we have different signs. Well, if we have different signs and we add them together or put them together and it results in a positive, that means the larger number is positive. So next thing we're going to do is going to list our factors of negative 21. Factors of negative 21 are 1 and 21, 3 and 7. That's it, because 21 is not an even number, so it's not divisible by 2. But remember, larger number is positive. So if my larger number positive, my smaller number is negative. And I'm looking for a combination that when added together gives me 20. So there it is. Okay, now I'm going to do my box. Draw your box out. Lead term goes here, so 3x squared. End term goes here, negative 7. Split the two terms here, so negative 1x and 21x. Now start pulling out your GCFs. GCF here is 7. GCF here is x. GCF here is 3x. And GCF here is negative 1. Okay, don't ever forget, you could always at least factor out a 1. Remember, guys, greatest common factor is what they can both give up, the largest number that you can divide out of it. It's never going to be bigger than the smallest number. So, for example, when I'm looking at 3 and 21, I know whatever they can give up is not going to be any bigger than a 3, because a 3 can't give up a 5 or a 10. Biggest number it can give up is 3 or 1. So then you look over here and have to decide, 3 or 1, can I give it up? So do it that way. So here's your answer. X plus 7, 3x minus 1. Okay? All right. Next one. All right, A times C. 3 times negative 12 is going to be negative 36. And B is 5. So what do we know? When you multiply two numbers together, you're going to get a negative, so that's different signs. And when you add them together, the resulting answer is positive, so your larger number is positive. And if you want to, I don't like putting a little plus sign because it looks like a T. All right, so we're going to list out our factors of negative 36. So what are the factors of 36? 1 and 36. 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Well, guys, if you already know the answer of what two numbers multiply together to give you negative 36, give you 5, there's no need to do this. okay? I'm just showing you the longer version on how to do it for those of you who need it. Okay, so I'm looking for the larger number is positive, so that means my smaller number is negative. So I'm looking for the combination. This would give me positive 35. This combination would give me positive 16. This combination would give me positive 9. That combination would give me positive 5. Ding, ding, ding. That's the one I want. Okay, draw your boxes. Okay, lead term in the first square. End term in the bottom right. Split the middle. Make sure you add your x's. Factor out your GCFs. 9 and negative 12. It's not going to be anything bigger than 9. So think about what can make 9. 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So 1, 9, and 3. What number can come out of 12? 3. X and no x can't give up an x. 3 and negative 4. That can only give up a 1. X squared and x is x. Then go this direction. GCF is going to be 3x. And then this direction, again, negative here. So that means this answer is going to be negative. So your solution is x plus 3, 3x minus 4. Okay. All right, number 6. A times C is 6. B is 1. Okay, A times C is positive 6, B is positive 1. So when you multiply them together, you're going to get a positive. So we know that they are both, or signs are the same. Sorry about that. Same signs. Same sign, and when you add them together, you get a positive 1. So that means they are both positive. All right, so I'm going to list out my factors of 6. Now, you might be laugh about 6, but trust me, 6 is the most missed one. All right, so 6. 1 times 6. Almost skipped over that. 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And they are both positive. So, because they're both positive, when I put them together, that's going to give me 7, and that one's going to give me 5. Wait a minute. I need sun. Is it possible? No. So this means the solution to this problem is cannot be factored. Okay, there's a difference between cannot be factored and cannot be solved. This would be solved. It's solvable, but you would have to use the quadratic formula in order to solve this problem, which we're not there yet. But this cannot be factored as is. Okay. All right, now it's your turn. I want you to go ahead and I want you to try these two. You're going to pause the video. If you want to stick around and follow me along because you're still confused, but I would try to pause it just to make sure that you understand what you're doing. Go ahead and pause it, and when you're ready, hit play again. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply A times C, so 4 times 5, which is 20, and then we're going to say what is B, and B is 12. All right, so we are looking for two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get 20. So if you multiply them together and you get a positive, that means they are the same sign. And when you add them together, you get a positive 12. Well, the only two type of numbers the same numbers that can be put together to give you 12 would be both positive. You can't have a negative and a positive and get a positive up here. All right, list your factors of 20. Factors of 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Okay, you're looking for a combination that when you multiply them together, you get 20. There's 3 possibles. But when you add them together, you get 12. Well, there it is right there. Draw your boxes. Lead term in the first, end term in the last. Split the middle. Make sure you add your U in there. Often forgotten. Take your GCF out. And again, guys, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you put the 10U here or the 2 there. It doesn't matter as long as they're together. Okay, pull out your GCF. 10 and 5. GCF is 5. 4U squared and 2U. They both can give up a 2 and a U. Now we're going to go this direction. They both can give up a 2U. And they both can give up, what can they both give up? Remember, there's always a factor of 1. So the solution to this equation is 2U plus 5 times 2U plus 1. Now keep in mind, you could always check your answers here by foiling it using the box method that I talked about the other day on the lecture and make sure it results back in that. Okay, go ahead and do number 8. This is our last one. Pause and hit play when you're ready. All right, A times C equals 8. B equals -9. All right, we multiply two numbers together and we get a positive. We multiply them and we get a positive. That means they are the same signs. And when you add them together, you get negative, so that means they are both negative. All right, let's figure out our factors of 8. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. They are both negative, so make sure you put your little negatives on there. There's my combination that's going to give me -9. Draw your boxes. Okay, lead term in the top left, end term in the bottom right. Split the middles with the terms you found. Pull your GCFs out. Because this one's negative, we know this is going to be negative. So 8x and 2 is going to be 2. Through here, best they can give up is an x. This way is going to be 4x, and this way is going to be -1. So the solution to this answer is 4x minus 1, x minus 2. There you go. There's your factoring. So we are set. You need to make sure that you bring your notes in tomorrow. I know these didn't have step-by-step instructions, but be sure to ask for help tomorrow.